Hello and welcome to the Wednesday check-in here on Landy's Crypto Corner powered by the Goxstein News Network. Today is July 16th, 2025. We're going to look at Bitcoin today, but we're also going to look at Bitcoin dominance and we're going to look at Ethereum and maybe a few other things as well because there is some pretty important things going on in the market that I think we should take a look at, but also we should take a look at critically, right? And understand kind of what might come next and what is potentially going on right now that could facilitate maybe some more of an altcoin season and not just a mini alt season, as that's kind of the narrative that's going around, is alt season is here. But we've seen this quite a few times since earlier this year, last November, and just coming into the fall of last year as well, when Bitcoin dominance had fallen. So we're going to take a look at some of that stuff. I want to maybe we'll take a look at total two with Bitcoin and stables removed, and kind of set some criteria, and then watch that carefully over the next few weeks and see how things go. But for Bitcoin, we did hit our downside target on the daily that was talked about on Monday, and that was, right at the upper first standard deviation for Bitcoin on the daily bands here, which has now moved up to 117,255. This was somewhere around 116, kind of oscillating upper 115 to 116 area. I believe when I recorded, it was right around 116. We did get a strike right at it in the Tuesday session, and with a low coming in at around 115,700 or so. Now, in this case, the bands do move around. That's one of the reasons why I gave kind of, said 115 still like safe, right? Safe area, but we want to see the upper first hold on a close. We now have seen that. We did get the other portion of what I talked about a little bit on Monday, and that is that because price did pull back and put in a high here on the daily, we now have price living below on a close the upper second standard deviation. So the bands are, at least the upper second and third, are now swooping up above price action. Upper third is near that Fibonacci level, which is essentially 41.4% above the prior cycle high, and even the 109,360 to 74, 420.69, the prior high to higher low on the monthly. So same confluent area on the daily at around $128,000 is 41.4% above both of those highs, the one at 69K. And then for the more local structure, the high there at 109,360, which was kind of defining the range before Bitcoin showed that it could break out and start getting some closes, above at 112, and then of course get closes above that 112 for this continuation on this move up. Now, what's some criteria that we need to be aware of right here, right now? Could this correction, get steeper to the downside? Sure. But we also need to know that where we would see another higher low put in place. So we'll start with that, and that's going to be above the Wednesday high. Now, of course, I'm recording this on Wednesday. Thursday session is open, as I do start these recordings after the session close. So the Wednesday session is now closed. The high is at 120, 134. I would say, if we start seeing closes back above the close open all-time high, it's going to look pretty good. That's around 119, 863 to that 120, 134. That's where we would see a, not just this swing low being set, which was set with yesterday's candle. We don't have the closing low. So this move is still corrective, but there is the potential to see this set another higher low. And that would occur above that, that 119, 850 to 120 level. And that's where we could look right back to the top side here around the upper second standard deviation. Again, same kind of criteria. Above 120, I am looking around the $123,000 level. But more importantly, I would need to see price closing back above, even in the lower term timeframes, back above this upper second standard deviation here, which is at 122,200. So in order to even go and test the $123,000 high that we have and that we were looking for prior, that's what we'd need to see even in lower term timeframes, is Bitcoin trading above that 122.2 on the daily. And then of course I'd look right back to 123. Anywhere above 123, I'm looking 123 to 125 as a zone of interest, and then right on up to that upper third standard deviation, somewhere around 128 to $130,000. Now I will say that's a little bit lower likelihood when you do have a setup like this on the bands, but it's not out of question. Now that's where we'd need to see a low set between that 119, 850, 120. Closes above there, we can start looking back up to right to that 122 level as a next big benchmark around that 122, 122.2, and then 123 to 125, and then we can start looking up to 128, 130. Now, what could happen to the downside, however, is that if we start to see the upper first standard deviation lost, look immediately to the Tuesday low here around this 115,700. If that is dropped, we're likely going to see a test down towards the next big area of support. Could it swing around the daily low here at 115,200, 115 area? Absolutely. But it would be more biased towards a correction to go and retest the high side structure over here, to retest the breakout somewhere around the basis band here. And I would prefer to see if it's going to remain bullish. I prefer to see the bulls keeping closes above the basis band. But there is a very positive thing with the basis band right now, which is a 20 simple moving average, and that is that it is above the prior all-time high over here at $112,000 even. So we still have a zone of interest to the downside that is very, very, very relevant. And some are going to take, the close open here at 109, which is fine, 109,630 to the 112 as just a, bigger topside structure retrace and test. And then, you can look to the highs within it, 110 to 112. You can extend that down to the close open here at 109,630 or so. And that's fair game. I would say that that's very, very close to the last higher low consolidation, as we only have a higher low swing with the Wednesday closure being green. The higher low swing is in place, but it is not a close yet. So the last relevant higher low is still down here at 107,270. And that higher low consolidation structure is what would invalidate the uptrending structure here as it stands right now. And we'll see if that develops into, this being a higher low, and then that's the invalidation for trend. But right now it's still the 107,270 on a swing, and on a closing basis, as a reminder, that's going to be at $108,000. And you might recall that we were looking for 108 to 110 in that zone there. We got the 108 closes. We did see the swings below, but no closes below. And then above 110, it was to 112. We got that in, a few candles later after the lows were held. And then, of course, lift off. So this move is technically still in progress and still has room to the upside, but I wouldn't rule out at minimum a consolidation fairly soon, even if it does test and make higher highs. A consolidation is very likely going to be coming soon. We'll see how long that consolidation lasts when it does when we do see it. Now, that does not rule out higher high structure. That does not rule out, even 128,000 to 130 getting hit. But you can see every time we go from compression to expansion, we typically run pretty hard. And then we start to go into consolidation. Now, I just want to reference this off of the prior big structural breakout, which was, very lengthy, right? We've got pretty similar length of time between the consolidations here. Not quite as long over here, if I remember correctly. Haven't actually measured it in a while, so it's not top of mind at the moment. But you can see, we tested the highs, got a higher low, nice breakout, a little bit of a consolidation, and then we got some continuation and then consolidation, right? Then we had a move back down. We had essentially, this was essentially 74, 420.69 was essentially a test to the top side of the structure. So, we do need to be aware of that, and we'll track that as price develops in the coming days and weeks. But for now, the move is still ongoing. I will say that with the bands passing price, just be aware that these upper bands are going to act as overhead resistance until we see another compression on them. And there's positive indicators all around on the chart here, with the basis band being above the prior all-time high here, with Bitcoin still having quite a bit of distance from its daily higher low consolidation down here. But we're starting to get, potentially some signs that things, while still could continue to head up and is still very bullish, that, we might need to just be more aware of timing and when things might start to slow down in terms of this particular move. So as it stands right now, move is not over, but I would look to these levels overhead on the bands. And as they develop day by day, close by close, the upper second's likely going to be at 123 or above, maybe even towards that 125 region, right? Maybe it starts expanding past and replacing the upper third here on the expansion, especially if Bitcoin is holding above the basis and even more so above the upper first here. Then we'd be looking for it to expand. And then we have to look to that upper second as possible areas of reversals, or somewhere around the upper second, upper third as a zone, much like what we saw back here, right? We had the expansion past, held above the upper first, didn't quite touch the upper second, but it expanded past. We came back down, corrected to the basis, and then shot right back to the upper second, upper third. But that was in the context of expansion kind of ending and going into more of a compression. We did see a second move up there, and then, continuing to kind of bounce around and go into a consolidation. So again, it was making higher highs, beautiful move. And then we got the real structural change, not just a swing change in structure, but the closing structural change here in some of the downtrending structure. So that's just something to kind of preview right now. And, it's so far so good. Love this move. Love the little correction down. It was great even for some lower term time frame traders. And let's look at a few other things. Again, we don't have any in trend for this particular trend. We don't have any bearish divergence that is populated just yet. We do have some historical bearish divergence. It is not hidden bearish divergence in this case. Or I guess it would be because it's a different trend, right? But it's corrective until we start to see regular bearish divergence develop within this structure on RSI. We do have the bull critical zone, which is the 80 read right here, right there at $128,000. So be aware of that. You'll see that we haven't gotten outside of it too much since we had the actual last big move in late last year in Q4 around the November timeframe. So could we see it extend past that? Sure. We might as well take a look at some of the more extremes here on RSI, just so that we know where they are. And that would be user alert level would be $137,000, almost $138,000, which is pretty interesting when we pull a fib structure on this move for the local fib structure on log scale. Now this is log scale, I believe. We'll take a look and just double check settings. I believe it is going to be log scale. Yes, it is. And on a log scale fib pull, you can see that $138,000 is right there at the 1618. So, on log fib, on a log fib here, we'd be looking essentially up to that user alert level that I just pointed out on RSI, and it's also a 61.8 or a 1618 off of the local structure. And that's the prior monthly high to prior monthly high or low fib pull on extensions here. So that would be, a relevant area above 128 to 130. And, we did talk about this just recently as well. And interestingly enough, if we make this linear on the daily, because I've been getting more requests to look at linear, For the daily, you can see that we reached up towards a 1414, kind of, perfectly spiking a 1272 on linear at 118. Coming back down, holding around, we can see that there's a 1.168 or 16.8%. And then just above is a 1414. We got a 1618 at 130. So, there's confluences everywhere. I prefer log because I'm working off of longer term time scales like the weekly. But if you like to use linear, just compare. I flip back and forth all the time just to see, where we have confluence levels of interest. And you'll see often Bitcoin on the daily likes to play around those levels on both log and linear. And more log is typically a little bit more relevant on macro timescales, but linear will work as well. It's really up to you and your preference. I do prefer log though, and I keep it on pretty much all the time. In this case, we've hit our target at 123K. So I was expecting a little bit of a correction. Now can we get back to it? Trade to that 125 and go for that 128 to 130. If it does shoot past there, showed you on RSI, there is the potential for that 138. Now I will say that momentum is pointed to the downside. There's no divergence here in this new trend. 121,624 would turn that back to the upside. And that means that even if we did see a low set, we trade above and close above 121.34, we would have to see price continue to close higher to get momentum to turn back up. And that's when we can start targeting, if we haven't already hit, the 122, went for the high at 123, 125, so on and so forth. That's where we could potentially start to target that as well. But it's a lagging indicator. So we take our trend, support and resistance and volatility. That creates momentum. And that would just be an extra confirmation or confluence on top of that. Now, if it does start to spike up and momentum does not change because the closes are not getting sustainably higher and shifting that momentum, then it's usually a little bit of a counterpoint to what we're seeing, saying like, hey, if it keeps failing here, it's likely going to correct harder. So in this case, the door is open for both the bulls and the bears to correct a little bit more here, and the bulls, of course, to set another higher low and maybe go for the highs again. Now, let's get into some interesting stuff. Let's go take a look at Bitcoin dominance. Now, I mentioned this on the timeline recently, recently meaning today. This is the longest sustained downtrend since swinging the highs. So we saw up here, we saw a nice higher high on Bitcoin in mid-June. We swung it, and then it's been down. You'll be like, well, this is 4 weeks of downtrend. This week is still live. And in fact, if you look at the days from that swing to now today, this will be the 20th 20th day since we swung the highs. That's the longest sustained period that we've had with Bitcoin dominance moving down since back here where we had a grand total of, I believe, 12 days. Yeah, let me just make sure this is measured out right. Yeah. So this is going to be the last big swing. We did have one that was about a 10-day, and that was in February. But this one from high to low was 12 days. So this is the longest that Bitcoin has been basically downtrending since swinging a high that we've seen in a while. Now, of course, this has resulted in Ethereum getting quite a move up, and this is going to look a little complex if you haven't seen this chart in a while, but this is some of the major areas of interest on longer term time frames with some dailies for the consolidation because it was bouncing between two big weekly levels here. But essentially, from the daily standpoint, we can see here that we'll just get rid of some of this, and we can always put this back on the chart later. But I had mentioned and have been mentioning on Ethereum that in order to kick off alt season, we've seen that, other alts have run and made new all-time highs and stuff like that. Ethereum did not. And what was the result in Bitcoin dominance? Well, Bitcoin dominance, we got like little mini alt seasons. Bitcoin dominance would go down for a period of time and then rebound very, very hard. And, it doesn't matter which altcoin or meme coin or anything that you're into. The fact is is Ethereum needs to run with all of them and maybe even lead the way. It depends on who you ask, but it needs to start moving up in a very aggressive fashion to cannibalize that Bitcoin pair, right? To actually bring that Bitcoin dominance down. So why have we seen Bitcoin dominance, take a longer dive down, even longer than back in November? Well, that's because, it's broken out above some key areas, the 2,700 to 29, low 29, mid 29 region, depending on your chart here, 29, 27, and especially 3K. Above 3K here, we see this close open and a nice push up with a nice, beautiful expansion posture. Move's not over yet. This is what you want to see. You want to see Ethereum and all of the alts moving to cannibalize the Bitcoin pair's dominance, right? And in this case, Ethereum's got a beautiful move. Last higher low is right there at that, you can call it the swing low at 2,900. Realistically, you want to see Ethereum holding up above $3,000. This close open right here, essentially. And that's where you want to be. That's where you want to be. And in fact, if it drops to low around 3,100, you would see a high set. This looks like it wants to go for more. Don't know if it has more in it, but it definitely could hit 3,500 to 3,600 by the upper third if it really wants to. I mean, overall on longer term timeframes, you want to see it up here around 4K, right? That's what we need to see. Start to reclaim that 4K where it's been rejecting from that 4,000. It's actually 39.30 to around 43.84. So really want to see that area reclaimed. That would look good to go and run the prior cycle highs and potentially go on a run higher. For the daily, obviously, we would see corrections in between, but so far so good. And it's got some juice. I do think, if it closes below 3,300, which it's well above, it's still got juice on the daily. It's hitting some extremes, more corrective than not. There is some other bearish divergence points. This is a new trend though. In the current trend, it's fine. Let's see, where's the read up here? We actually did hit an 85 read on RSI midday around the 3,400 level. That's at 3,410. It would have to really get up above there to hit 3,500. But it is certainly not out of the question. When Ethereum wants to go, it goes. Both of the upside and the downside, but that's true of, Bitcoin and alts. But alts tend to, outperform in both directions. And in this case, it's got some legs. And more importantly, this is the really important thing on the weekly. You want to see closes by the end of the week above 3,200. We might check on this on Friday, but we have a trend change, and this is, we had lower highs right on the weekly to higher low structure here. And then of course we had the trend change. So the trend change was really important, but more important was holding that 2930 to 3K level and starting to push above this upper second standard deviation. This is where the bulls want to be. They want to close above here, above 3,200 on the weekly, and start really pushing to the top side. And then on any downside moves, you can see on the weekly here, the upper first standard deviation directly in line with this very, very important zone right around 2,700. So bulls do want to see that being held, and that would look really good. We do have, we have a pretty high stochastic momentum read. Now, this is not a Stoch RSI for those that might be new. Stoch RSI measures the velocity of RSI. This is close over close price momentum using a regular Stoch 6.314 255 look back for the nerds out there. The biggest moves will typically occur when you see price above the overbought zone or below the oversold zone. So that's where the biggest moves typically occur. $3,000, look at that, is the momentum pivot. So that is what we want to see Ethereum holding to preserve some more aggressive upside price action. I will say, 36 to 3,700 by the upper third. If you see close above 3,200, this is going to start to move right into that, 38 to 4K level up here by this 39.30 level. So that is something to be aware of. So I am getting a little bit more granular with price calls here. And of course, to the downside, bulls want to see on any corrections, 2,700 hold by the upper first. Now, could it still correct below there? Sure. Likely it would end up back in a recompression in a range, but as long as it's holding above the 2,300 to 2,100 level here by the last weekly higher low, it's looking good. So this is encouraging if you're in alts in general, not just if you're a fan of ETH. And why is this so? Oh, I see why. Let me flip back to Bitcoin and then do this. Okay, that makes more sense. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up total 2. And we're going to look at total 2 excluding, we're going to do excluding Bitcoin and stable coins in this case. So on the weekly here, we have not seen, we did see, of course, higher highs back in December. But again, because ETH wasn't following along with some of the other major alts that did hit some higher highs, mainly Solana and a few others that are top 10 market cap coins that also hit some new higher highs, we got a failure up here. The prior high being at 1.33 trillion with a nice swing on the weekly to 1.43 trillion. Now, of course, this is stable coins removed and Bitcoin removed. So it's total 2 without Bitcoin and stables. So in this case, we need to see that 1.33 recovered, and then we need to see it pushing on forward. And what I really like about this is we had expansion, and then we kind of got a little compression, expansion, but bounced off the lower second and back into compression here. So drove up past the basis here, corrected back to the lower first, and bounced right back to the upper second. Closes above 1.11 trillion. Would look really damn good to get expansion back to the highs. Now, again, this looks very similar to Ethereum's weekly price chart. If Ethereum breaks out above its all-time high and then sustains a breakout above it, then I think we have a full-blown alt season. Until we see that, which obviously we would see the total 2 minus Bitcoin and stables doing the same. And likely total 2, including stables, also well above its highs. But that's where we can then say, like, okay, this is the real alt season. Everything before that is mini alt season. All right. So just be aware that if Bitcoin corrects, we're likely going to see Bitcoin dominance rebound. And if Bitcoin's correcting and consolidating, but we see this well above its highs, we're likely in full-blown alt season at that point. We are not there yet. It's still a ways off. So what you're seeing with some of the beautiful upside and some of the nice recoveries and alts and memes and all that stuff, it's not, we're not there yet. Could this become that over time? Absolutely. So I did want to check on this. This looks this is a beautiful setup. We got a downtrend to a lower high, trend reversal setup, higher high, trend reversal confirmation. Last higher low needs to be held, and that's at 8.13 bill on the close to 775 billion. So look, this is a really nice setup. I like it, and I think that we are at minimum looking for trending structure, even if on a correction, trying to reach that 1.3 to 1.4 billion or trillion. I'm sorry, 1.3 to 1.4 trillion. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. No, it is not full blown alt season yet. Yes, the potential is right there on the table. Watch Bitcoin carefully. Watch Ethereum carefully. Wherever Bitcoin goes next, especially if it corrects deeper, if we continue to see Ethereum outperform Bitcoin in its pair, then I think that we're looking at a very strong total 2 minus Bitcoin and stables there. And just as a gut check, let's scroll down here and check total 2. Yeah, so total 2 doing much of the same thing. Very, very similar look on total 2, even with the stables added in. So it's sitting at 1.39 trillion. it's got to get all the way to 1.7. You'll notice that without Ethereum driving with all of the rest to new all-time highs on the prior move back up here, we did not see a new all-time high on Total 2 with stables added. So keep an eye on it without the stables added and with the stables added, or just keep an eye on Ethereum and the Bitcoin dominance chart or ETH BTC, especially if we do see a deeper correction in Bitcoin. And that's really all I got for you today. I know this was a longer one, but I felt it was important to kind of discuss this, kind of lay the groundwork for Friday and potentially, the coming weeks going forward. So looks great. One last thing. The vote for the Genius Act. I know a lot of people are excited. Oh, it passed. That was a vote to reintroduce it. We're looking at maybe tomorrow, which would be today on the chart, the 17th, although today is the 16th. The 17th is, I believe, when they're planning to vote again on that. And then that will go to Trump's desk, right, to be signed. Now, the other two, the Clarity Act and the Anti-CBDC Act, those would have to go to the Senate. Those will not be going to Trump's desk. Those would be going from the House to the Senate. So I did want to clarify that. I've seen some mixed messaging and some really poor headlines from some major news outlets and mainstream media that are kind of driving the narrative of it's passed, it's passed. I mean, maybe it's a foregone conclusion, sure, but it's not actually passed yet. So could that be a catalyst? I think so. Definitely for stables, that's for sure. And we'll see if that, of course, bleeds over to some beautiful price action, especially for alts. And we'll take it day by day. And I'll see you on Friday. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And, of course, as always, stay safe. With all that being said, Landy out. Take care.